This happened about 3 years ago when my husband and I were driving cross country from Utah to Georgia. Although the route we had mapped out wasn't the most direct, it passed through some places my husband really wanted to visit. The downside of that, though, was that we'd be cutting through some pretty desolate stretches of highway. The worst part was this section of western Kansas along US Route 400, basically 100 m of nothing but farmland. We'd been driving for most of the day, and I had fallen asleep in the passenger seat sometime around sunset. I'm one of those people who can sleep anywhere in a moving car, so I was out cold for a few hours. Around 10 at night, I woke up to the car slowing down and realized my husband had pulled into this tiny gas station off the side of the highway. My husband said he was going to grab some snacks and fill up the tank. I figured it might have been my last chance for a while to use a Rio bathroom, so I got out and headed inside. I didn't bother bringing my phone or purse with me. I was just going to be in and out, so I didn't really see the need. The cashier was this older guy who didn't even look up when I walked in. The bathrooms were tucked down this narrow side hallway toward the back of the store. As I opened the women's restroom door, I almost bumped right into this woman who was coming out of one of the stalls, which wouldn't have been that noteworthy were it not for what she looked like. She had messy, unkempt gray hair that frankly looked kind of disgusting and oddly sticky. She was also wearing these foam flip-flops that made this soft slapping sound when she walked. As if that wasn't bizarre enough, what stood out the most was this thick purple and green coat she was wrapped in. Let me remind you, we were in Kansas in the middle of summer, and it was probably 80 degrees out. She was carrying this tied-up plastic grocery bag, and when she saw me, she just stared. Not like a normal, "Oh, excuse me," kind of look, but this lockdown stare that felt weirdly expectant, like she was waiting for me to say or do something specific. I didn't know what I was expected to do, so I just gave her a polite nod and tried to step around her, but she didn't exactly rush to let me through. I figured that was the end of it, that she'd leave me and I could get on with my life. But no, instead of leaving, the woman actually turned around to follow me and stepped toward the sink area. But she didn't turn on the water or look in the mirror or do any of the normal things you do at a sink. She just stood there with her arms at her sides like she was again waiting for me to do something. I was already feeling uneasy, so I went into the nearest stall and locked it. The second I sat down, I immediately regretted not bringing my phone or anything with me. I had no way to text my husband if something went wrong, and I was starting to get the feeling that something was definitely off about this woman. I sat there for what felt like a few minutes, just waiting for her to leave. Eventually, I heard the soft slap of her flip-flops moving toward the door, then the sound of the bathroom door opening and slamming shut. I waited a few extra moments to make sure she was really gone. And then I realized something. I could still hear breathing. Not my own. Someone else's coming from somewhere in the bathroom. It dawned on me that she had faked leaving. She must have opened and slammed the door to make it seem like she left, but she was still in there, standing silently somewhere near the exit, probably in the corner by the door, just out of my line of sight. I didn't move. I sat in complete silence for a really long time, trying to quiet my breathing because I was terrified at the thought of her hearing me. The whole time I kept thinking about how stupid I was for not bringing my phone. Eventually, the door was opened and closed again. The breathing stopped too, which sent a wave of relief over me. I still wasn't completely convinced though, so I waited for another half-minute or so. Just as I was about to unlock the stall, I heard a huge gasp like someone had just been holding their breath, followed by the bathroom door opening and closing again. That's when I truly started freaking out. That woman had pretended to leave the bathroom twice. I had absolutely no idea what she wanted, but the fact that she was playing these games with me made it clear that whatever it wasn't good. I didn't know what to do. Part of me was sure she was gone. But if she had pretended to leave twice, it wasn't crazy to assume she had done it a third time. Finally, the suspense was killing me, and I couldn't take it anymore. I unlocked the stall as quietly as I could and stepped out, fully expecting to see her standing there. But the bathroom was empty. I washed my hands as quickly as possible and stepped out of the bathroom. I had no idea where the woman had gone or if she was waiting for me somewhere else in the store. When I got back to the main part of the store, there was this large man checking out at the counter. I lingered by one of the racks near the front until he finished his transaction and walked out. Then I used him as cover to exit the store. I figured if the woman was waiting outside, at least there would be another person around. Part of me thought I was being overly paranoid, but that thought was shattered the moment I stepped outside. As soon as I exited the store, I saw her again. She was lingering off to the side of the front entrance of the store, this time clearly glaring at me. She was holding something in her hand that I couldn't quite make out. It looked like a knife, but I wasn't sure. The way she was holding it, though, and the way she was slightly crouched, like she was preparing to spring, honestly made it seem like she was about to attack me. I prepared myself to have to scream or run, or even fight. But instead of moving towards me, the woman quickly turned and walked around the side of the building toward the back. I ran to our car and got in as fast as I could. My husband looked confused and asked what had taken me so long. I told him I'd explain once we were back on the road. He didn't question me and just pulled away. As we were leaving, I looked back and saw the woman standing at the edge of the building watching our car. I don't know why, but seeing her made me so unsettled and uncomfortable. I told my husband everything and he kind of got mad at me for not bringing my phone with me to call him for help, which was fair. But that was that, and the two of us agreed to try and forget about the whole thing and go back to enjoying ourselves. I will say that I don't use roadside restrooms anymore, which I'm not in the slightest bit upset about. There's a quick check off the highway not too far away from where I live. It's the only thing open 24/7 in my rural middle of nowhere town. It's about a 25-minute drive if I'm speeding, which I usually am. So, to translate for all you city folk, it's basically right next door. My sleep schedule is beyond atrocious, so I've been to that quick check more than a handful of times. I like to think I'm pretty generic looking and nondescript, meaning I blend in well, but it wouldn't surprise me if some of the late-night workers recognize me by now. This happened just last week, so most of the details are still painfully fresh in my mind. It was past midnight, and I was coding on my laptop. My productivity and focus peaked between the hours of 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. So, I was in that flow state that any hard worker craves. The problem with late-night grinding is that you go from perfectly comfortable to dying of hunger in a matter of minutes, which is exactly what prompted me to shut things down and grab something to eat around the reasonable hour of 2 a.m. Just so you have an understanding of everything, I should mention that the highway leading to the quick check is more of a local road than an interstate, so it's usually pretty dead. The ride there was relatively uneventful. I pulled into the quick check, ordered a sandwich from one of the counters, and roamed the aisles while I waited. The mix of caffeine I'm usually stymied out on, and the ADHD I was born with makes it difficult for me to sit still. So, I was just kind of pacing around one of the corners of the store when I noticed something. Facing one of the refrigerators that lined the back of the store was a person sitting crisscross on the ground. It was such an odd sight that I initially overlooked it, then snapped my head back around to make sure I hadn't imagined it, and I hadn't. There was literally a person sitting on the ground at the end of the aisle, facing the refrigerator like he was examining it. I couldn't see anything other than the brown coat and jeans he was wearing. But as I was turning to get back on the highway, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I glanced back towards the store and saw a person running full speed from the store entrance to the far end of the parking lot. I was already halfway onto the highway at that point, but as soon as I saw what looked like a brown coat, I knew it was him. As I drove past the quick check, I looked over at it one more time to see that guy was now jumping into a truck. I didn't even want to imagine what a guy like that could possibly be rushing to do at 2 a.m. I was just happy I had nothing to do with it. I sped off, just wanting to get home in peace. After a few minutes, the last of the fluorescent storefront lights faded into darkness behind me, and I was driving through desolate nothingness once again. I'm used to being the only car on the road when it's that late at night, which is why it was so surprising when I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. But it was even more surprising when I realized the headlights were getting closer, meaning they were going faster than me, and I wasn't exactly driving the speed limit. My first thought was that I was about to get pulled over, so I instinctively slowed down a bit. The headlights kept approaching, and I knew what was about to happen. Police lights were about to start flashing, and my night was about to be ruined. But once the car finally got close enough, I realized it wasn't a cop. It was that guy. That guy from the Quick Check. It was the same car from the parking lot. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I slammed my foot back on the gas and got back up to speed. The guy behind me started flashing his lights at me and honking, and I didn't know what to do. Try and outrun him or pull over and just pray that he'd keep going. I was in a sedan, and he was driving a pickup truck, so I figured I could outrun him. The faster I went though, the more terrified I became. I can only describe that feeling as true terror. The feeling that you're literally approaching death. By the time I'd gotten up to 100 miles per hour, the voice in my head was screaming that I was going to die if I kept accelerating. I swerved into the right lane, hoping he'd shoot by me, but instead he actually swerved to stay behind me. I started slowing down with the intention of pulling over on the shoulder. But the moment I took my foot off the gas, the truck actually rammed into me. I grabbed the wheel to stabilize the car and realized I was in a life-or-death situation. The guy telling me was trying to kill me. Everything was happening so fast. I couldn't think. I knew he was going to try ramming me again. And at that speed, I knew I would be lucky not to spin out. I don't know if it was the terror or my survival instincts kicking in. But the moment I saw him go for it, I swerved to the left and slammed on the brakes. The truck shot past me and I watched as he swerved back and forth a few times before spinning out and shooting off the highway into the field. Despite how violently my hands were shaking and how terrified I was, I forced myself to start driving again. I sped the entire way home. As soon as I got inside, I called the police and reported the incident. Although it's not like I could precisely describe where everything had gone down. They took my statement anyway, and I was happy to give it. I know for a fact that Quick Check had security cameras in their parking lot, so I'm pretty confident they'll end up catching that guy. It's only been a week since this happened, but I haven't heard anything yet. My car isn't dinged up too badly, but I still need to get it repaired. As for why in the world that guy had gone after me, your guess is as good as mine. I just hope I never see him again. This happened in the summer of 2022. I was 25 and working what I guess you'd call an unusual logistics job. I was hauling refurbished electronics and custom PC parts for this last-mile delivery startup that was trying to compete with Amazon and weird rural markets. The routes were long and completely erratic. Sometimes I'd be driving for 12 hours straight, often through the night, hitting these remote parts of the Southwest that most delivery companies refuse to touch. The pay was decent enough to make it worth it, and I didn't mind the long drive since I had grown up in a road-tripping type family. This particular night, I was deep into the final leg of a Phoenix to Lovington run. It was around 1 o'clock in the morning and I was winding through this desolate stretch of Route 82 past the outskirts of Lincoln National Forest in southern New Mexico. If you've never driven through that area at night, it's hard to describe how isolated it feels. The road is narrow and poorly lit. You might see another car every 20 or 30 minutes if you're lucky. But here's the thing about that particular stretch. It's also the only accessible route cutting through the area for miles. The GPS alternatives would add like 2 hours to the trip, winding you way north through Carrizo or something like that. So if you needed to get from point A to point B in that part of New Mexico, you pretty much have to take Route 82. Anyway, I was listening to some true crime podcasts when I rounded this bend and saw a red hatchback awkwardly pulled onto the gravel shoulder with its hazards flashing. I slowed down a bit out of habit. As I got closer, my headlights illuminated a woman standing next to the car. She was holding her phone high in the air like she was trying to catch a signal. My first instinct was to just drive past. I mean, I'm not heartless, but I'm also not naive about the kinds of situations you can walk into in that part of the state at that time of night. But then I started thinking about my own girlfriend or my sister and how I would want someone to stop if they were stranded in the middle of nowhere. Plus, I wasn't completely defenseless. I had a Glock 43 holstered just under my steering column. I never explicitly got permission from the company to arm myself, but given some of the areas we delivered to, it seems like common sense to me. I slowed down and cracked the passenger window a couple inches. The woman, who didn't seem much older than me, rushed over immediately and tried my passenger door handle, which was locked. She said she needed a ride to the nearest gas station, and claimed her car had just died and she couldn't get anyone on the phone. Her voice had this jittery quality to it, like she was either really stressed or maybe on something. I hesitated for a few seconds. The situation felt a little off, but what tipped the scale was knowing I had a firearm within reach. I figured if things got sketchy, I'd be able to handle myself. So I unlocked the door. She got in quickly and gave me this vague and slightly slurred "Thank you so much," without really looking at me. The way she slurred her words made me think she was drunk or maybe a little tipsy, which made me a little cautious. Before driving away, I asked her some obvious questions. Had she hit something or did the engine cut out, that sort of thing. But she kept deflecting, repeatedly, asking me to just drive. Nothing she said really made sense, and I was leaning towards kicking her out of my car the more she talked. I was about to make a decision when I glanced over at her car one more time. To my horror, a man stepped out from behind it like he had been hiding there the whole time. The adrenaline started to kick and I turned to face forward. There was another figure that had stepped directly in front of the road about 50 feet in front of us. There was something long in his hands, maybe a bat or a pipe. I couldn't tell exactly. He started moving toward my car and that's when my survival instinct took over. I floored it. I didn't even try to be subtle about it. The woman whipped around to look back and immediately started yelling. Then she reached down and started digging around in her purse for something. I had a feeling I knew what she was looking for. So before things could escalate, I yelled at her to freeze and drew my gun. I didn't point it at her, but instead just rested it on the steering wheel so she could see it. Whatever she had been reaching for, she stopped immediately. I told her not to move, and she didn't. To my surprise, she stopped talking too. She just stared straight ahead with this expression I couldn't read. Luckily for her, we were less than 30 minutes from Artesia. After a somewhat tense half hour, I pulled into a gas station. There were 2 other vehicles in the lot, both big rigs. I told her to get out. She refused at first and gave me some stupid reason I can't remember. But I leaned across her, yanked the passenger door open, and basically forced her out of the truck. She stumbled back and fell onto the pavement, all the while yelling something completely incomprehensible. Someone started jogging over, probably one of the truckers, and I could already envision the accusations that were about to fly. All that guy had seen was me throwing a woman out of the car, and I didn't want to deal with the situation for a second longer. So I didn't. I yelled out a warning to him about her ill intentions, but that was all I was going to do. Then I peeled out of the lot before that guy could approach me and didn't look back. I drove to another gas station and started filling my tank. Then I walked over to the passenger side to inspect the seat. Buried between the seat cushions was a burner phone battery and a sealed pack of zip ties. I didn't even want to think about it. I tossed all of it in the trash and got back on the road, eager to be done with the journey. I never reported any of it. Not to the police, and definitely not to my company. Not because I didn't think it was worth reporting, but because, legally speaking, I didn't really want to explain to a bunch of cops why I was driving around armed or why I had physically removed someone from my car. I'm not going to get into it, but you can connect the dots on that one yourself. One thing's for sure, though. Being armed that night may have very well saved my life.